Hello, my name is Alun Evans. I'm the CEO of Freeverse, and today we're going to be talking about Web3 and digital ownership in the gaming world. Now, I'm from the United Kingdom, from the UK originally, and in the UK we have a very common spread or condiment that you put on your breakfast, on your toast and bread first thing in the morning. It's called Marmite. And Marmite, which you can see here, is a very interesting product because it is a very salty, very sour taste, very unusual, and famously you either love it or you hate it. And that's a little bit what we've seen in the NFT world, particularly in the world of gaming. There are people who love digital ownership and think it's the future, and people that absolutely hate it. And what I want to talk today a little bit about is really what Web3 and NFT and digital ownership actually means and how it can be applied in the gaming world and what benefits it can bring to the gaming world. So if we look at the history of the internet and how we speak to each other and relate to each other online, we look back to the very start of the web, and we had Web 1, which is all about reading content. The revolution of Web 2 was all about writing content to the internet and the web. And Web 3 technology really is about ownership. Now, what does ownership actually mean? It means that users actually have the permission to do what they want with their digital data, their digital files, right? And it extends from just simple ownership of digital content all the way to the idea of being able to control your digital identity, whether it's in gaming or whether it's in the metaverse or the future. And all this technology is basically permitted thanks to the blockchain. Now, the blockchain is a buzzword. Many of us will know about it, some of us won't. But you can think of the blockchain, if you're not familiar with it, as basically a database which is distributed amongst many people. In fact, it's decentralized, which means that no single copy of that database has the authority to change it, right? So the security of the blockchain comes from its decentralized nature. And in the blockchain, of course, we have many applications, the most famous of which is cryptocurrency. And cryptocurrency is what we call a fungible token. So Bitcoin is a fungible token. And the difference between a fungible token and a non-fungible token, or an NFT, is that fungible tokens, like Bitcoin, can be stacked. They are identical to each other, so you can count how many of them. For example, if you visited the United States of America, a dollar coin is a fungible item, right? Because $1 coin is exactly the same value as any other ones. By contrast, a non-fungible token is completely unique. So it is an asset on the blockchain that belongs to somebody that has certain properties, but thanks to its very nature, it is unique. And there's a lot of confusion, I think, in the general public about what an NFT, a non-fungible token, actually is. Some people think that it's an image, and some people think that it's a guarantee of right to an IP, a certain intellectual property. Some people think that it's a simple receipt of purchase. In actual fact, a non-fungible token is none of those things. A non-fungible token can be associated with an image. It can be associated with a certain intellectual property rights. It can act as a receipt of purchase. But in actual fact, an NFT is simply this. It is a unique ID for the asset. It has a unique owner, and it usually has a web link, a web URL that points to an external server outside of the blockchain. And so frequently, when you hear people talking about the content of an NFT, such as the image which is associated with it, that image in many cases is actually stored outside of the blockchain. And if that server fails, then if the server that contains the image or the data associated with the NFT fails, then the value of the NFT is essentially zero. So what has happened in the last 18 months is that because NFTs are unique items, and because you can demonstrate, you can prove who is the owner, what's happened is we've seen the introduction of artificial scarcity, right? So you can make collections of NFTs, and you can assign a limit to the maximum number of NFTs in that collection. And so here, for example, this image shows the homepage of a very successful NFT application called NBA Top Shot, where users can buy unique non-fungible tokens that represent video moments of basketball matches from the NBA in the United States. Right? And because there is a limited number of these items, there is artificial scarcity, and therefore that drives the price up of each NFT, because if there are many users who want to buy that particular moment and collect that particular moment, then of course the price, thanks to that artificial scarcity, gets driven up. And this is one of the problems with current NFTs that we see, right? People do collect things in the real world. People, collect stamps and cars and trading cards. But NFTs so far, the only functionality we've seen associated with them is collectibles, right? And so people buy NFTs just to collect them, right? So the value of the NFT lies only in how collectible it is. The other problem with NFTs, which is becoming slightly less of a problem now, is that they are expensive to make, right? They are, if you make millions and millions of NFTs, the costs of creating those NFTs, what's called minting the NFTs on the blockchain, can become very expensive. And indeed, they can actually break the underlying blockchain. In 2017, one of the first NFT applications that became popular, which was an application called CryptoKitties, that only had 10,000 daily active users, and it broke the underlying blockchain of Ethereum. And even this year, we had a new NFT collection called Sunflower Land, which was launched on Polygon. Polygon is an acceleration layer for Ethereum, and it had 500,000 weekly active users, and it essentially broke, or at least paused, the underlying blockchain. So the problems with NFTs, as I mentioned, are the fact that they're only associated with the collectibles, and making them at a volume which is suitable for use within the gaming industry is very, very difficult technically. That doesn't say we haven't seen collectibles in games. We have. Scarcity in collectibles do exist in games. You may have heard of Axie Infinity, the game made out of the Philippines. It's popularized a style of gaming called play and earn, where gamers collect NFTs, play with them in the game, and hope that the artificial scarcity associated with those NFTs will drive up their value, and therefore they can sell them on to other people and make a profit. But the problem that I have with this approach is that people play games to have fun. They don't really want to worry so much about making or losing money. And this whole gaming speculation requires a constant feed of new users, right? You must have an ever-expanding feed of new players in your game who are willing to buy the more expensive items, because if you don't, then the whole marketplace collapses. And indeed, we've seen that with many play-to-earn games. Axie Infinity is one of them. After a peak of popularity, the prices have dropped when the flux of users has slowed down. But the fact is that gamers do want to trade their in-game items. Gamers value, they care deeply about their in-game items. And indeed, if you go to some online trading, sort of slightly illegal or at least not officially approved online trading websites, such as playerauctions.com or gameflip.com, you'll see many in-game items being traded for real money against the terms and conditions of the game. And in fact, there have been some studies to show that up to 20% of an annual revenue for a game can be locked up in this illegal grey market trading. So what's the answer? How can games companies take advantage of this popularity in Web3 and go beyond simple collectibles? Our approach and our thoughts at Freeverse is to acknowledge that the collectibles economy exists and that people do want to collect and trade digital items, but view it really as the tip of the iceberg of what's possible with digital ownership, right? If we can create a new category of digital ownership where what the gamer actually does with their item affects its properties and its utility in the game, then we turn what is a passive activity of collecting NFTs into an active mode of engaging with that NFTs. And we call this concept living asset NFTs. NFTs, digital tokens that can evolve and change based on how they are used. So a living asset is an NFT whose on-chain certified properties can change based on how it is used in the game. Let's see some examples. So a typical game might feature a weapon. A fighting game might feature a weapon. The default version of that weapon might be very underpowered. It might serve as a basic introductory weapon, but as the gamer plays the game more, they can upgrade that weapon to make it more powerful. Now, if this weapon were an NFT, when the gamer sells this item on the marketplace, the value of this axe in particular will be based on how much the axe has been upgraded by the gamer by playing the game, and not just on how rare it is. So we've converted the NFT from being just a collectible into a token that has utility to other people. And as a result, the value on the market is based on that utility. Let's take an example in the sports field. Imagine you have a football player in a football game, and a user may buy that player for a certain amount of money. Then by training that player, by improving the player's statistics such as speed, fitness, shootability, tackling, etc., that player will become more valuable to other users of the game. And so the value of this asset in the marketplace is based on what the player what the user has done, and not simply how rare it is. This video obviously doesn't need to explain the Tamagotchi phenomenon, which is an amazing retention game mechanic, right? The idea that your little digital pet will die if you don't come back and look after it several times a day. And you can apply Tamagotchi mechanics to living asset NFTs as well. So as the properties of the NFT can degrade automatically through time, so for example, the fitness of a football player degrades unless you come back and train that player, you're incentivizing the user to come back and keep engaging with the game. Otherwise, the value of their digital asset, their living asset NFT, will go down because the utility of the asset to other users has lowered as well, has gone down as well. We can see an example of this in a game that we made here at Freeverse, a football game. You can see a player who's in the prime of his life here at the left-hand side, but the user, over a course of a period of a few weeks, has not trained this player, so the player has got slightly more unfit, a bit fatter, he's grown a beard, he's less fast, he scores less goals, so his value on the marketplace would be less than what it was before. Also, living asset NFTs can be evolved through customization. User-generated content is a very big issue in the gaming sector these days. And so if you allow a user to customize their avatar or their digital items in a game, then they can sell those items on, and the value is based on how well the customization has been done, and not by speculation on the scarcity of that NFT. And when you think about it, a living asset can evolve by any data you want, right? So we've talked about evolution through time. The stats of the NFT can be linked to almost any property you can think of. So for example, they could be linked to the temperature of the sea in the North Pole, or they could be linked to the passing of the seasons. And they can even be linked to real world data, for example, the number of shares of a certain post on Instagram, or making a certain hashtag a trending topic on Twitter, can be linked to the success of an esports team. So you can evolve a living asset NFT based on many, many different examples, almost anything you can think of. Why is this important? So when we made our game, the Football Manager game I was speaking about, we saw absolutely sky-high user retention values, day 30 retention values of more than 40%, which is almost unheard of in the games industry. Why? Because the users were coming back with this Tamagotchi mechanic to stop their player from becoming too unfit, because they didn't want their team, their players, to lose their market value. So gamers were coming back. They were incentivized to come back into the game, to keep playing it, in order to make sure the value of their assets in the game did not drop. And of course, if you have such high retention values, that increases the engagement of the player and increases the chance of monetization as well. And as we all know, retention is one of the key statistics that's associated with monetization. Another reason for allowing this second-hand trading is that the game developer or publisher can monetize every time this trade happens. I mentioned before about how the second-hand market exists in a slightly illegal form, or at least against the terms and conditions of the game. By using the blockchain as the bank, and by converting these assets into NFTs, you can monetize them. So every time an asset is sold between players, the game developer can take any percentage that they like. What we think in Freeverse is that this movement from the Web 2 life, with the Web 2 status quo that we have right now in the games industry, towards a Web 3 modality where ownership becomes very important, is going to be a very profound transformation. And we draw an analogy of what happened 15 years ago when free-to-play became available for the first time. The games industry initially thought, no one's ever going to make money by giving games away for free. But what happened is that many intelligent people worked hard at the problem and came up with monetization strategies that allowed them to give the game away for free and still make money. And as we've seen now, free-to-play is one of the dominant modalities in the video game industry, even overtaking the more traditional retail model where you buy a game up front. And we think that this transformation into digital ownership is going to be very, very similar, as gamers realize the potential of what can be done by truly owning and trading their digital assets. We'll see new monetization strategies that will allow game developers ways to capture more audience, ways to increase the retention in their games, and ways to increase the monetization. So, in summary, what we think the approach of living assets turns the idea of NFTs just as collectibles on its head. We move away from collectibles and turn into living asset NFTs, where the value of the NFT is not provided by speculation and scarcity, but it's provided by actions, user actions, and the engagement of the user. So we can think of different ways that these NFTs can assist games and brands beyond speculation, driving new revenue models and engaging users in new ways. This is what we do at Freeverse. We have a platform that allows game creators to do all these things, to create and evolve and trade living assets. We can do so at scale with millions of NFTs, with payments in every currency in the whole world, permitting the game creators to charge a recurring revenue on every single time that asset is traded. And if you'd like to find out more information about that, then I can be contacted here, and I'll be happy to answer your questions. Thank you very much.